Welcome back, guys. It's Mr. Ross. Today will be the final lesson of week 5. This is day 2, the quadratic formula part 2. The other 2 days, days 3 and 4, will be our review, and then our last day 5 will be the small assessment. So just make sure you go back and watch these videos. If you have any questions, you can always email me or join one of the Zoom chats. On this particular one, you're going to notice that every single time we have a number that's not a 1 there, and there's a decent chance that some of these will have to be put in the correct order. So on this particular one, it's already in the correct order, which is good. So I can start with my ABCs. So A equals 3, that's the number in front. I remember we have A, B, and C. B, of course, is going to be 6, and C is going to be negative 17. So quadratic formula, opposite b or negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of this divided by 2a. And technically the first part is x equals, but x is just the variable. It's what you're solving for. So let's continue on. Let's start with our substitution. So negative b, opposite b, so b is 6, so that'll be negative 6, opposite b, plus or minus the square root of b squared. Remember, this guy is always positive because you square him. So 36 minus 4 times a, which is 3, and c, which is negative 17. All right, again, these numbers are going to be a little bigger, so you're probably going to want to have a calculator with you to help you with some of them. Then the bottom is 2 times a, 2 times 3, which of course is 6. All right, so let's switch colors here. Remember, we got to do the math starting with the negative 4. That's the part where people make the mistake. Start with the negative 4. So negative 4 times 3, negative 12. Negative 12 times negative 17. That's positive 204. So I'm going to have negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 36 plus 204. And then all of this divided by 6. So 204 is going to add to 36 and give me 240. Now 240, you'll notice, is not up there at the top, so that must mean it simplifies. Now the square root of 240 is not a perfect square. Alright, so don't even try that one. So we got to come up with another number that could go into it. Alright, so you can sit there and try different perfect squares until you find the right combination. I'm going to go ahead and do the spoiler alert. It's going to be 16. So it'll be negative 6 plus or minus the square root of 16 times the square root of 15. 16 times 15 will give you the 240. And then all this is still over 6. Alright, now, the reason why we picked the 16 is because that's the perfect square. So it'll be negative 6 plus or minus 4, the square root of 15 over 6. Now this right here is not a bad answer. So if you were to do this on the assessment, I would give you most of the points. But you got to ask yourself, are you done? Is there something else that can be done? So you look at the numbers out in front. Don't worry about the square root. Look at the numbers out in front. All right, they all have to have a number. So for example, if that 4 was not there and it was a 1, you really couldn't do anything. Now all those numbers are divisible by 2. So we're effectively going to divide all 3 of those numbers by 2. Alright, and we are going to get negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3 plus or minus 2 the square root of 15 over, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. So that's my proposed answer. I'm going to zoom out here and you're going to see with the answer choices that is the correct answer. The only difference is, remember, they listed it out as 2 answers. So one answer is negative 3 plus 2 the square root of 15 over 3. And the other answer is negative 3 minus 2, the square root of 15 over 3. The plus or minus, this means you're going to get 2 answers. If you take a look at number 2, you can see the answer is 4 1/2. No weird square roots, no I answers. So just because they changed the number in front, just because there's a number here, doesn't mean that it's guaranteed to be a big number answer or just a strange answer in general. It can still work out. All right, but I want to go ahead and try number 3. You can see here number 3 does have a funky square root It doesn't break down. So let's take a look at number 3 here. It is in order, A, B, C. All right, so let's start with this one here. A equals 4, B equals 10, and C equals negative 11. Opposite B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all over 2A. All right, let's just jump right in. Opposite B would be the opposite of 10, so negative 10, plus or minus the square root of 10 squared, which is 100, minus 4 times A, which is 4, and C, which is negative 11. And then all of this is going to be 2 times A, or 2 times 4, which of course is 8. All right, again, you may have to use your calculator because some of these numbers do get big. All right, so you're going to have to do negative 4 times 4, which will be negative 16. Negative 16 times 11, that's 176. So we got negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 plus 176, all of this over 8. So if we add those two numbers together, we're going to get negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 276 over 8. Now, 276 is not in my answer. They have the square root of 69. All right, so 276 must break down. So we can take 276 and start dividing it, see what goes into it, hope we find something that works. All right, it looks like the only combination that works is 4. So we're going to end up with negative 10 plus or minus the square root of 4 times the square root of 69. 4 times 69 is 276. All of this over 8. So the square root of 4, as you know, is 2. So what they did to get their final answer is they looked at negative 10, 2, and 8, and they asked themselves, is there something that can go into all of that? So what can go into negative 10, 2, and 8? Well, that would have to be 2. So what they did is they simply just went back and divided by 2. All right, so this got divided by 2, this got divided by 2, and this got divided by 2. All right, negative 10 divided by 2. I'm going to have to borrow some space up here at the top. So I'm going to take this and move it up here. Negative 10 divided by 2 will be negative 5, plus or minus. All right, 2 divided by 2 is 1, and the square root is 69. You really don't need the 1. And then 8 divided by 2 is 4. Okay? Now remember what the plus or minus means. Plus or minus means I have two answers. So I'm going to have negative 5 plus the square root of 69 over 2, because I don't really need the 1. And then negative 5 minus the square root of 69 over, should be 4, excuse me. I do not know why I said 2, so don't make that mistake. This should be a 4. I think I'm just used to having 2 on the bottom, but it is clearly a 4. So then those are your 2 correct answers. Okay? All right, so let's take a look at a few on this page, especially this one right here. Number 6. All right, number 6, as you can see, is out of order, and number 6 has an I answer. All right, so we haven't had an I answer yet, but we have had one that was out of order. So let's go ahead and move the 12 over by subtracting it, get it in order. So now we're going to have 6x squared minus 10x, and then 20 minus 12 will be 8, and that equals 0. Remember, it has to equal 0 when you're going to do the quadratic formula. All right, A is going to equal 6. B is going to equal negative 10. And C is going to equal 8. That's what we're going to use in the quadratic formula. Opposite B, or negative B, plus or minus the square root of B squared minus 4AC, all over 2A. All right, the remaining problems, number 8, you can see here, out of order. So you'll have to move them on this side by doing the opposite. Number 7, out of order. You'll have to move it over doing the opposite because it's not in the correct order. All right, it's the same thing we're doing on number 6. If it's in the wrong order, you have to make it in the right order. All right, number 5, in the wrong order, you'd have to move the -6 over. And remember, when we move those, we just do the opposite. So if I wanted to move that 10r squared to number 9, I would add it. I would add it over. If I wanted to move that r, I would subtract it since it's positive. And always line it up with your like terms. It really is that easy. All right, let's get back to number 6 here. All right, number 6, we need to start filling in the blanks. All right, negative b, so opposite b. B is already negative, so it'll be positive 10 plus or minus the square root. This number is always positive. 10 squared or negative 10 squared is still going to be 100. Minus 4 times a is going to be 6, and c is going to be 8. All of this is going to be divided by 2 times a, or 2 times 6, which of course is 12. Alright, mistakes happen here. We've been talking about this throughout the last 2 videos. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24. Then you might want to use your calculator on this one. Negative 24 times 8. So 24 times 8 is going to be 192. Now it is a negative 192. So I'm going to have 10 plus or minus the square root of 100 minus 192. Well, that's a negative. You can't take 192 away from 100. There's just not enough numbers there. All right, so I'm going to use the space down here at the bottom here. So we got 10 plus or minus the square root. 100 minus 192 is negative 92, all over 12. All right, well, the negative 92 that's an I answer. You can't have that. So it's going to be 10 plus or minus I, the square root of 92 over 12. Now, 92 is a pretty decent sized number, so it makes me believe that there's something else we can do with it. So we're going to try dividing it by different numbers, and guess what? It's divisible by 4, which is a perfect square. So 10 plus or minus, we have an I, the square root of 4, and 23, because 4 times 23 is 92. All of this over 12. The square root of 4, we know, is 2. So now I have, I'm going to switch colors here. I have 10 plus or minus, remember this was a 2, 2i, the square root of 23 over 12. So make sure you can't simplify anymore. Can any number go into 10, 2, and 12? And you should already know that it can. The number is 2. So we're going to divide these 3 right here by 2. And we're going to get 5 plus or minus 2 divided by 2 is 1i, or just I, the square root of 23 over 6. All right, now remember, my answer over here shows 2 answers, okay? And that's because I'm going to, it's over here, sorry. They've split it up into 2 answers, a plus and a minus. So if you want to see that on yours, you can. You just have to write it out twice. So if you want to write it out twice, you can. You're going to get 5 plus I, the square root of 23, over 6. And then you're going to get 5 minus I, the square root of 23, over 6. So that's how you can get your 2 answers. But again, that's not necessary. If you want to just use the plus or minus, you can. You can see here in the red, it's the same exact answer. They've just done the liberty of splitting it up for you. Okay? So, do not be discouraged when you get an answer that has an I in it or a square root in it that is not a perfect square. As you can see, this happens. The reason why there is the quadratic formula is because not every problem can factor. If your answer has 2 numbers that are rational numbers, like a number 2, that means that it could have been factored. But if your answer has any type of square root in it that did not simplify, such as number 3 here, or more recently, number 6 that we just finished, that means it was not a perfect square and that you have an irrational number, or as a number 6, you have an imaginary number. There's no way you could have factored that. You have to use the quadratic formula. Okay? All right, you guys know the drill. Solve the problems after you watch the videos, and if you have any questions or you get stuck, please reach out to me to email, or we'll set up a Zoom chat. All right, guys, thank you. Have a great day.